The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor before anyone even looked at her. Elara Vance didn't flinch. She had been cleaning up other people's messes for 6 years at the Alder Grand, and broken glass was just another Tuesday. But the words that followed the shattered crystal cut deeper than any shard ever could. A man in a charcoal suit, his face flushed with expensive whiskey and arrogance, gestured toward her with a lazy flick of his wrist. "Don't mind her," he said to the circle of powerful men seated in the penthouse suite. "She's just the cleaning lady. Invisible. You could confess to a murder in front of her, and she'd just mop around the body." The room erupted in low, cruel laughter. Elara kept her eyes on the floor, her thick, curvy frame hidden beneath the shapeless navy uniform the hotel issued. She felt the familiar heat of shame crawl up her neck, but she didn't let it reach her face. She had learned long ago that people like this fed on reactions. They wanted her to cry, to stammer, to prove that their words had power. She gave them nothing. She simply knelt, her knees pressing into the cold stone, and began picking up the pieces of glass with steady, practiced fingers. The man who had spoken was Vincent Hale, a mid-level financier with ties to 3 different crime families, though the hotel's records only listed him as a consultant. Elara knew this because she remembered everything. It was her curse and her gift. Every conversation she overheard, every document she glimpsed, every name whispered in the hallways. It all lodged itself into her brain like a photograph. She never asked for it. She never used it. It was just there, a silent archive of secrets she wished she could forget. Tonight, the penthouse was hosting a meeting that the front desk had been told was a private business dinner. But Elara had seen the security detail in the lobby. 12 men, all armed, all wearing the subtle lapel pin that marked them as soldiers of the Vieri family. The Vieri name was a legend in Chicago. They controlled the ports, the unions, and half the politicians in the city, and their boss, Dante Vieri, was rumored to be a ghost, a man so dangerous that even the FBI couldn't get a clear photograph of him. Elara had never seen him. She didn't want to. She just wanted to finish her shift, go home, to her small apartment in Logan Square, and feed her cat. But the broken glass had other plans. As she worked, the conversation above her continued without pause. The men spoke in the casual, coded language of criminals who believed themselves untouchable. "The shipment arrives on the 23rd, Vincent Hale said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "Pier 7. The customs officer has been paid. We'll move the product through the warehouse on Halsted before dawn." Another voice, deeper and rougher, cut in. "And the problem with the Italians? Handled. Marco Benedetti agreed to the terms. He'll take 40% of the northern route, and we keep the south. The truce holds until the 1st of next month." Elara's mind recorded every syllable. The 23rd, Pier 7, Halsted Warehouse, Marco Benedetti, 40%, northern route, truce, until the 1st. She didn't want to know these things. She didn't want to be a witness to a conspiracy that could get people killed. But her brain didn't give her a choice. It never did. She finished collecting the glass and stood up, her back aching from the awkward position. She was a substantial woman, with wide hips and soft curves that the hotel uniform did nothing to flatter. The men in the room saw her body and dismissed it as laziness. They saw her size and assumed she was slow, stupid, and unworthy of attention. They had no idea that behind her plain face and tired eyes was a mind that could recite every word they had spoken for the last hour with perfect accuracy. As she turned to leave, the door to the penthouse opened. The air in the room changed instantly. It was as if someone had sucked all the warmth out of the space and replaced it with a cold, electric tension. Elara froze. A man stepped inside. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders wrapped in a black suit that looked like it had been stitched onto his body by a tailor who understood power. His hair was dark, slicked back, and his eyes were the color of winter steel. He moved with the quiet, predatory grace of a man who had never needed to raise his voice, because his silence was louder than anyone else's scream. Every man in the room stood up. Vincent Hale's face went pale. "Mr. Vieri," he stammered. "We weren't expecting you until later." Dante Vieri didn't look at him. His gaze swept the room, cataloging every face, every shadow, every potential threat. And then his eyes landed on Elara. She felt it like a physical touch. His stare was not dismissive. It was not cruel. It was assessing. He looked at her the way a collector might look at a painting that everyone else had overlooked. He saw her, not the uniform, not the mop, not the broken glass. Her. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was low, smooth, and utterly devoid of warmth. Elara's throat tightened. "I'm just the cleaning lady, sir. I was just leaving." She moved toward the service door, but Dante Vieri raised one hand. The gesture was small, almost lazy, but it stopped her as effectively as a wall. "Stay," he said. "I want to know who broke the glass." Vincent Hale laughed nervously. "It was nothing, Mr. Vieri. Just an accident. The maid will clean it up." Dante turned his head slowly toward Vincent. The financier's laugh died in his throat. "I didn't ask you," Dante said. "I asked her." Elara's heart pounded against her ribs. She had spent her entire life trying to be invisible, trying to avoid the attention of powerful men who saw people like her as disposable. But now, the most powerful man in Chicago was staring at her, waiting for an answer. "It was an accident," she said quietly. "I was emptying the trash, and a glass fell." It was a lie. Vincent Hale had thrown the glass at the wall in a fit of anger over a phone call. But Elara knew better than to tell the truth. The truth got people like her fired. Or worse. Dante studied her for a long moment. She could feel his gaze tracing the lines of her face, the curve of her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly around the handle of her cleaning cart. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elara. Elara Vance." "How long have you worked here?" "Elara Vance." 6 years. "And in 6 years, have you ever spoken about what you've seen in these rooms?" She understood the question behind the question. "Have you ever talked to the police? Have you ever sold information? Have you ever been a threat?" "No, sir," she said. "I don't talk to anyone. I just clean." Dante nodded slowly. "Good. Then you can finish your work." He turned away from her, and the spell was broken. Elara practically fled through the service door, her cart rattling over the threshold. She didn't stop until she was in the staff elevator, the doors sliding shut behind her like a shield. She pressed her hand to her chest and tried to breathe. She had just looked into the eyes of a man who could order someone's death with a single phone call. And for one terrifying, confusing moment, she had felt something other than fear. She had felt seen. The staff corridor on the 14th floor was empty, as it always was at this hour. The Alder Grand was a hotel of two worlds. The front of the house was all crystal chandeliers, Italian marble, and guests who paid $3,000 a night for a suite. The back of the house was a maze of narrow hallways, fluorescent lights, and workers who were trained to be invisible. Elara had learned the hidden paths years ago. She knew which service elevators were never monitored, which stairwells led to the loading dock, and which storage closets had cameras that didn't work. She had learned these things from a woman named Marta. Marta Kowalski was 67 years old and had worked at the Alder Grand since before Elara was born. She was a floor supervisor now, but she had started as a laundry girl when the hotel first opened. She knew every secret the building held, and she had taken Elara under her wing when Elara was a 22-year-old temp, fresh out of community college, and desperate for a steady paycheck. "You have a gift," Marta had told her once, after Elara had casually mentioned a conversation she'd overheard 3 weeks earlier. "But gifts like that can be dangerous in a place like this. You need to learn how to be invisible, really invisible, not just quiet, not just polite, invisible." Marta had taught her how to move without sound, how to keep her eyes down without looking submissive, and how to use the service corridors to avoid the guests entirely. She had also taught her something else. "There are rooms in this hotel that don't exist on any floor plan," Marta had said one night, her voice low and serious. "Rooms where bad men do bad things. If you ever find yourself in trouble, if you ever hear something you shouldn't, you come find me. I know how to make people disappear." Elara had never needed to take Marta up on that offer, until tonight. She found Marta in the basement laundry, folding sheets with the mechanical precision of someone who had done the same task 1,000,000 times. The older woman looked up as Elara entered, and her expression shifted immediately. "What happened?" Marta asked. "There's a meeting in the penthouse," Elara said. "The Vieri family. I heard things, Marta. Things I shouldn't have heard." Marta's hands stilled on the sheet. "What kind of things?" "Dates, locations, names. A shipment on the 23rd. A truce with someone named Marco Benedetti. A warehouse on Halsted." Marta's face went pale. "You need to forget you heard any of that." "I can't," Elara said, her voice cracking. "You know I can't. It's all in my head. Every word. I could repeat the entire conversation back to you right now." Marta grabbed her arm, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman her age. "Then you keep your mouth shut. You don't tell anyone. Not the police. Not your friends. Not even me. Do you understand? The Vieri family doesn't forgive. They don't forget. And they don't leave witnesses." "I'm not a witness," Elara protested. "I'm just the cleaning lady. No one even looked at me." "Except him," Marta said. "You said Dante Vieri looked at you." Elara nodded, her stomach clenching at the memory. "Then you're not invisible anymore," Marta said. "And that means you're in danger." The next 3 days passed in a haze of anxiety. Elara kept her head down, did her shifts, and tried to convince herself that Marta was being paranoid. She was nobody. A plus-size cleaning woman, with a community college degree, and a cat named Pickles. No one was going to come after her. But on the 4th night, everything changed. She was cleaning the executive boardroom on the 12th floor when the door opened and 2 men in dark suits walked in. They weren't hotel guests. She knew the look of hotel security, and these men weren't it. They were Vieri soldiers. "Elara Vance?" the taller one said. Her blood turned to ice. "Yes, Mr. Vieri wants to see you. Now." They didn't give her a choice. They escorted her to the private elevator that led to the penthouse, the same elevator she had used 100 times with her cleaning cart. But this time, she wasn't invisible. This time, she was the center of attention. The penthouse had been transformed since the meeting. The furniture had been rearranged, the curtains drawn, and a large mahogany table had been set up in the center of the room. Dante Vieri sat at the head of the table, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. Around him sat a dozen men, including Vincent Hale, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Elara Vance," Dante said as she was brought before him. "I've been asking questions about you." Her heart hammered. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that led to interesting answers. You've worked here for 6 years. No complaints. No incidents. No friends. No social media. You're a ghost." "I'm just a cleaning lady," she said. "I keep to myself." "You also have a perfect memory," Dante said. "According to your former professors at City College, you have an eidetic auditory memory. You can recall conversations verbatim after hearing them once. Is that true?" Elara felt the floor drop out from under her. She had never told anyone at the hotel about her memory. She had learned early in life that people either didn't believe her or tried to use her. "It's not something I advertise," she said quietly. Dante leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. 4 nights ago, there was a meeting in this room. A private meeting. Do you remember what was said? She could lie. She could say she didn't remember. But something in his gaze told her that lying would be a fatal mistake. "Yes," she said. "I remember." "Then repeat it." The room went silent. Every man at the table stared at her, some with curiosity, some with contempt, and some with barely concealed fear. Elara took a deep breath, and then she opened her mouth and let the words pour out. "The shipment arrives on the 23rd, Pier 7. The customs officer has been paid. We'll move the product through the warehouse on Halstead before dawn." Her voice was steady, her delivery precise. She didn't stumble. She didn't hesitate. She recited the conversation exactly as it had happened, word for word, including the pauses and the inflections. And the problem with the Italians? Handled. Marco Benedetti agreed to the terms. He'll take 40% of the northern route, and we keep the south. The truce holds until the 1st of next month. When she finished, the silence was deafening. Vincent Hale's face had gone from pale to ghostly white. Several of the other men were staring at her with open mouths, but Dante Vieri's expression was unreadable. "Impressive," he said softly. "But that's not all you heard, is it?" Elara swallowed. "No, sir. There was more. Tell me." She closed her eyes for a moment, accessing the mental file she had tried so hard to lock away. After the main conversation, 2 men stayed behind, Vincent Hale and another man, a man with a scar on his left hand. She opened her eyes and looked directly at a man sitting 3 seats down from Dante, a man with a scar on his left hand. His name was Paul Caruso, and he was one of Dante's most trusted bodyguards. They spoke for 7 minutes. Elara continued. Mr. Hale said, and I quote, "The boss is getting soft. He doesn't see the opportunity with the Italians. If we move the shipment a day early, we can cut him out and take the full profit. Benedetti will back us. He's tired of Dante's rules." The room erupted. Paul Caruso shot to his feet, his hand reaching for his gun. But before he could draw, 2 other bodyguards grabbed him and slammed him against the table. Vincent Hale tried to run, but the door was blocked. Dante Vieri didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He simply watched as his traitorous bodyguard was disarmed and restrained. Then, he turned his gaze back to Elara. "You just saved my life," he said. "Do you understand that? The shipment they were planning to steal was worth $12 million. And the ambush they had arranged for me at the warehouse would have been the end of the Vieri family." Elara's legs were shaking. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because I was scared. I didn't want to be a loose end." Dante stood up. He was even taller than she remembered, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. "You're not a loose end," he said. "You're the most valuable person in this hotel, and I don't let valuable people go." He turned to the man on his right. "Find the hotel manager. Tell him Elara Vance no longer works in housekeeping." Elara's heart lurched. "Wait, you can't fire me. I need this job." Dante looked at her, and for the first time, something flickered in his cold eyes, something that might have been amusement or respect. "I'm not firing you," he said. "I'm promoting you." The hotel manager, a thin, pinched-faced man named Gerald Whitmore, arrived in the penthouse 5 minutes later. He took one look at the restrained bodyguard, the terrified financier, and the furious Mafia boss, and immediately started sweating through his expensive suit. "Mr. Vieri," he stammered, "I had no idea about any of this. The hotel is not involved in any illegal activities. We simply provide rooms." "I don't care about your legal exposure," Dante said coldly. "I care about how you've treated your employee." He gestured toward Elara. "This woman has worked here for 6 years. She has an extraordinary mind. And yet you had her cleaning toilets and emptying trash, while men like Vincent Hale treated her like furniture." Gerald glanced at Elara, his expression flickering with confusion and disdain. "She's a cleaning lady. That's her job." "Not anymore," Dante said. "She works for me now. And you're going to pay her 6 years of back wages at triple her current rate, plus a severance package that will make her very comfortable. Or I'm going to have a very long conversation with the hotel's board of directors about the kind of meetings you allow in your penthouse." Gerald's face went through several shades of red and purple before settling on a defeated gray. "Of course, Mr. Vieri. Whatever you think is fair." "I think $100,000 is fair," Dante said. "Have the check delivered to my office by tomorrow morning." He turned to Elara. "Pack your things. You're coming with me." Elara's head was spinning. "Coming with you where?" "To my home. You're not safe here anymore. Paul Caruso has friends. Vincent Hale has lawyers. The moment word gets out about what you did, you'll have a target on your back." "I don't want a target on my back," she said. "I want to go home and feed my cat." Dante's lips twitched. It was almost a smile. "Bring the cat." The Vieri estate was located in a gated community in Lake Forest, 40 minutes north of the city. It was a sprawling mansion of glass and stone, surrounded by 10-foot walls and enough security cameras to monitor a small country. Elara had never seen anything like it. She had grown up in a cramped apartment in Bridgeport, the daughter of a waitress and a truck driver who had died when she was 15. She had spent her entire adult life in small spaces, making herself small to fit into them. This house was the opposite of small. It was designed to intimidate, to impress, to remind visitors that the man who lived here was not to be trifled with. Dante led her through the marble foyer, past a grand staircase, and into a private wing on the second floor. "This will be your room," he said, opening a door to reveal a suite that was larger than her entire apartment. "There's a bathroom, a walk-in closet, and a sitting area. The kitchen is downstairs. My staff will bring you whatever you need." Elara stood in the doorway, clutching the carrier that held a very unhappy Pickles. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" Dante turned to face her. In the soft light of the hallway, he looked less like a monster and more like a man. A tired, dangerous, complicated man. "Because you saved my life," he said. "And because I've spent 20 years surrounded by people who lie to me. You told the truth. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't try to bargain. You just told the truth." "I was scared," she admitted. "I'm still scared." "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you alive. But you don't need to be afraid of me. I don't hurt people who are loyal to me. And you, Elara Vance, have proven your loyalty without even trying." He reached out and, very gently, touched her chin. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that she forgot to breathe. "You've been invisible your whole life," he said. "But I see you, and I'm not going to let anyone make you invisible again." He dropped his hand and walked away, leaving her standing in the doorway of her new room, her cat yowling in protest, and her heart beating a rhythm she didn't recognize. The next week was a blur of adjustments. Elara was given new clothes, custom-tailored to fit her curves in a way that made her feel almost uncomfortable. She had spent so long hiding her body in shapeless uniforms and oversized sweaters that wearing a dress that actually fit felt like standing naked in a spotlight. "You look beautiful," Marta said when she came to visit on the third day. Elara had insisted on Marta being allowed through the security gates. She needed one familiar face in this strange new world. "I look ridiculous," Elara said, tugging at the hem of the emerald green dress. "I don't belong here, Marta. I'm a cleaning lady. I don't know how to be whatever it is he wants me to be." Marta sat down on the edge of the massive bed and gave Elara a long, searching look. "What do you think he wants you to be?" "I don't know. A witness? A weapon? A pet? Has he treated you like any of those things?" Elara thought about it. Dante had been distant, but respectful. He had given her space, asked her opinion on a few minor matters, and made sure she had everything she needed. He hadn't touched her again, not since that moment in the hallway. But she caught him watching her sometimes, his gray eyes tracking her movements with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "No," she admitted. "He's been kind, in his own way." "Then maybe he just sees your value," Marta said. "You've spent so long believing you're worthless that you can't accept it when someone treats you like you're precious." Elara's eyes stung. "It's not that simple." "I know it's not," Marta said gently. "But you're not in the hotel anymore. You're not invisible. You have a chance here, Elara. A chance to be something more than a woman who cleans up other people's messes. Don't throw it away, because you're scared." That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She wandered the halls of the mansion, her bare feet silent on the cold marble floors. She found herself in a library, a 2-story room, filled with books that looked like they had been collected over generations. Dante was there, sitting in a leather armchair, with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No, neither could I." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. The chair was so large it almost swallowed her, but she refused to look uncomfortable. "Why do you have so many books?" she asked. "I like to read. Most Mafia bosses don't have libraries. Most Mafia bosses aren't me." He took a sip of his whiskey. "My mother was a literature professor. She made me read a book a week from the time I was 8 years old. When she died, I kept the tradition." Elara was surprised. She had built an image of Dante Vieri in her mind, a cold, ruthless killer who cared about nothing but power. But the man in front of her was more complicated than that. "What happened to her?" she asked. "She was killed. A rival family. I was 16. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I made them pay." His voice was flat, but she could hear the old pain underneath it. "What about you? What happened to your parents?" "My father died in a trucking accident when I was 15. My mother, she's still alive. We don't talk." "Why not?" Elara looked down at her hands. "Because she wanted me to be thin. She wanted me to be pretty. She wanted me to be the kind of daughter she could show off to her friends. And I wasn't any of those things. So she stopped trying." Dante was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Your mother is a fool." Elara looked up, startled. "What?" "She had a daughter, with a mind like a vault, and a heart that didn't break, even when everyone around her tried to shatter it. And she threw that away, because you didn't fit into a dress size she approved of. That's not a mother. That's a jailer." No one had ever said anything like that to her before. No one had ever looked at her body and her mind and seen them both as valuable. She felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You barely know me." Dante set down his whiskey glass and leaned forward. His eyes caught the firelight, and for a moment, he looked almost human. "I know more than you think. I know you've been underestimated your entire life. I know you've been mocked, ignored, and dismissed. I know you've learned to make yourself small, because the world told you that you took up too much space. And I know that despite all of that, you didn't break. You didn't become bitter. You didn't stop caring. You just kept going." He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm and rough, and they wrapped around hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who want something from me," he said. "Power, money, protection. They all want something. But you didn't want anything. You just told the truth. And that truth saved my life. Do you know how rare that is? Elara's voice was barely a whisper. No, it's priceless. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned, almost courtly, and it sent a shiver down her spine. I'm not a good man, Elara. I've done terrible things. I will probably do more terrible things before I die. But I protect what's mine. And you are mine now. Not because I own you, because I owe you. And I always pay my debts. She should have been terrified. She should have pulled her hand away and run back to her room and locked the door. But she didn't. Because for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The peace didn't last. It never did in Dante Vieri's world. 10 days after Elara moved into the estate, the first attack came. She was in the garden, a walled courtyard filled with roses that Dante's mother had planted decades ago. She had started spending her mornings there, reading books from the library and trying to convince Pickles not to eat the butterflies. The bullet shattered a stone urn, 3 feet from her head. Elara threw herself to the ground, her heart exploding with terror. She heard shouting, the thunder of running feet, and then Dante was there, his body covering hers, his gun drawn. "Stay down," he ordered. "Don't move." She didn't move. She pressed her face into the grass and tried to remember how to breathe. The shooting stopped as quickly as it had started. Dante's security team swept the perimeter, but the shooter was gone. All they found was a single shell casing and a note tied to the gate. The note was short and written in block letters. "The fat maid dies next. Your traitor deserves revenge." Dante read the note in his study, his face like stone. Elara sat in a chair across from him, wrapped in a blanket, still shaking. "It's Paul Caruso's people," Dante said. "He had a brother, a younger brother named Nico. Nico was always the hot-headed one. Paul kept him in line. But now that Paul is in prison awaiting trial, Nico has decided to make a statement." "A statement," Elara repeated numbly. "He tried to kill me as a statement. He won't get another chance." Dante's voice was cold, but his eyes were burning. "I'm putting you under 24-hour protection. You don't leave the estate without me. You don't go anywhere without at least 2 guards. And I'm going to find Nico Caruso and make him regret the day he was born." "You can't just kill him," Elara said. "That's not who I want to be. I don't want to be the reason someone dies." Dante stared at her. "He tried to kill you. I know. But if you kill him, then I'm just another piece of your violent world. I don't want that. I want to find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way." She stood up, the blanket falling from her shoulders. "You said I was valuable. You said I had a mind that could save lives. Let me use it. Let me help you find a way to stop Nico without turning this into a bloodbath." Dante was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "I need to know everything about the Caruso family. Every connection, every debt, every secret. And I need to talk to Paul." The meeting with Paul Caruso took place in a secure room at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. Paul was a broken man, his arrogance stripped away by weeks of incarceration. He looked at Elara with a mixture of hatred and fear. "You ruined my life," he said. "I ruined your plan," she corrected. "There's a difference. Your brother Nico tried to kill me yesterday. He's going to try again. And if he succeeds, Dante Vieri will destroy your entire family. Is that what you want?" Paul's jaw tightened. "Nico's a fool. He doesn't listen to anyone." "Then make him listen. You're his older brother. You're the only one he respects. If you tell him to stand down, he'll stand down. And what do I get in return?" "You get to live," Elara said. "And your brother gets to live. And your mother doesn't have to bury both of her sons." Paul stared at her for a long time. Then he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You're not what I expected. No one ever expects me, Elara said. That's my advantage. In the end, Paul agreed to record a message for his brother. The message was simple and brutal. Nico, stand down. You can't win this fight. Vieri has everything. He has the cops, the feds, and half the families in the city. If you keep going after the maid, you're going to get yourself killed. And I can't lose you too. So stop. For me. For Mom. Just stop. The message was delivered through back channels. 2 days later, Nico Caruso turned himself in to the police, confessing to the attempted shooting. He would go to prison, but he would be alive, and Elara had kept her promise. She had found another way. Dante found her in the library that night, sitting in the same leather chair where they had first talked. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood in the doorway, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. You did it, he finally said. You stopped a war without a single body dropping. I just talk to people, she said. That's what I do. I listen, and I remember, and I talk. No, you did more than that. You showed mercy to a man who tried to kill you. You found a solution that no one else in my organization would have even considered. You proved that you're not just valuable, you're essential. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair. The gesture was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that Elara forgot to breathe. I've spent my whole life believing that power comes from fear, he said, that the only way to survive in this world is to be the most dangerous person in the room. But you're not dangerous. You're kind, and you still won. You still saved me. You still changed everything. He took her hands in his. I don't know how to be the man you deserve, but I want to try. I want to be someone who protects you not just with guns and money, but with everything I have. I want to be someone you can trust. Elara looked down at him, this powerful, terrifying man who was kneeling at her feet like a supplicant. And she felt something shift inside her, something that had been locked away for years. You already are, she whispered. He rose up and kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was fierce and desperate, and full of all the things he couldn't say. His hands cupped her face, his fingers tangling in her hair, and she kissed him back with equal intensity. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I'm not going to pretend this is normal, he said. I'm not a normal man. My life is dangerous. People will always be trying to hurt me, and by extension, you. But I swear to you, Elara Vance, I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever makes you feel invisible again. She smiled, a real smile, the first one she had felt in years. I'm going to hold you to that. The weeks that followed were a strange, beautiful, terrifying blur. Elara became a fixture in Dante's world, not as a maid or a witness, but as a partner. She attended meetings with him, her perfect memory serving as a living record of every deal, every threat, every promise. She learned the intricacies of the Vieri Empire, the legitimate businesses that masked the illegal ones, the alliances and rivalries that shaped the underworld, and slowly, she began to use her skills for more than just memory. She started noticing patterns. A supplier who always raised his prices before a big shipment. A politician who always voted against Vieri interests after meeting with a certain lobbyist. A bookkeeper whose numbers never quite added up. She brought her observations to Dante, and he listened. He always listened. You have a gift for this, he told her one night, after she had uncovered an embezzlement scheme that had been draining money from one of his construction companies. You see things that other people miss. I just pay attention, she said. That's what I've always done. When you're invisible, you learn to watch. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her soft, curvy body, with a possessiveness that still made her heart race. You're not invisible anymore. You're the most visible person in my world. The public reveal came 3 months after the shooting. Dante called a meeting of all the major families in Chicago, a rare gathering that hadn't happened in over a decade. The location was a private ballroom in a hotel that the Vieri family owned, a neutral ground where even enemies could meet without violence. Elara stood at Dante's side as the room filled with the most dangerous men in the city. She wore a custom gown of deep burgundy velvet, tailored to hug every curve of her body. She felt exposed, vulnerable, but she refused to shrink. Dante had asked her to be here, and she would not let him down. The meeting was tense from the start. The families were fracturing, old alliances crumbling, new threats emerging. And at the center of it all was a rumor, a whisper, that someone in the room had been feeding information to the FBI. "We have a traitor," Dante announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Someone in this room has been selling secrets, and I intend to find out who." The room erupted in denials and accusations. Men shouted over each other, tempers flaring, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. And then Elara stepped forward. "I know who it is," she said. The room went silent. Every eye turned to her, this curvy, plus-size woman, who had once been invisible. She could see the confusion on their faces, the disdain, the disbelief. Who was she? What was she doing here? Why should they listen to her? 3 weeks ago, she said, I overheard a conversation between 2 men in the parking garage of this hotel. They were discussing a meeting with an FBI agent, a meeting that was supposed to result in the arrest of a major family head. She turned and looked directly at a man named Salvatore Greco, an underboss from the West Side. "One of those men was you, Mr. Greco." Salvatore's face went white. "That's a lie. I would never betray the families. You said, and I quote, 'The feds are offering full immunity. All I have to do is give them Vieri on a silver platter. The arrest is scheduled for next Thursday. They're going to hit the Halsted warehouse at dawn.'" The words were exact. She had heard them 3 weeks ago, standing in the shadows of the parking garage, while Salvatore and his accomplice planned Dante's downfall. She had recorded every syllable in her mind, and now she played them back for the entire room to hear. Salvatore lunged for her, but Dante was faster. He stepped between them, his hand closing around Salvatore's throat. "You made a mistake," Dante said, his voice deadly calm. "You underestimated her. Everyone underestimates her. But she's the reason I'm still alive. She's the reason your plan failed. And she's the reason you're going to spend the rest of your life in a very dark, very small cell." Security dragged Salvatore away, his screams echoing through the ballroom. The other family heads stared at Elara with a new expression. Not disdain, not confusion, respect, and fear. Because they had just witnessed a woman who had been dismissed as a fat cleaning lady dismantle a conspiracy with nothing but her memory and her courage. Dante turned to the room. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "The people you ignore are the ones who will destroy you. The people you mock are the ones who will remember every word you say. And the woman you called invisible is the one who just saved every family in this room from a federal indictment." He took Elara's hand and raised it, a gesture of triumph and protection. "Elara Vance is under my protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. And anyone who forgets what she did here tonight will be reminded in the most painful way possible." The room was silent. Then, one by one, the family heads nodded. They understood. Elara was untouchable now, not because of Dante's power, but because of her own. She had proven that she was not a victim. She was a weapon, and she belonged to no one but herself. That night, back at the estate, Dante found her on the balcony overlooking the lake. The city lights glittered in the distance, a million tiny stars reflecting off the water. You were magnificent, he said, coming to stand beside her. I just told the truth, she said. That's all I ever do. The truth is the most dangerous weapon in the world, and you wield it better than anyone I've ever met. He turned to face her, his gray eyes soft in the moonlight. I love you, Elara. I didn't think I was capable of love anymore. I thought that part of me had died a long time ago. But you brought it back. You brought me back. She felt tears prick at her eyes. I love you too. I didn't think anyone would ever see me, really see me. But you did. From the very first moment, you saw me. He cupped her face in his hands. I see you. I will always see you. You are not invisible. You are not forgettable. You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever known, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you. He kissed her, and the world fell away. There was no danger, no violence, no fear. There was only him and her, and the promise of a future neither of them had ever dared to imagine. The next morning, Elara woke up in Dante's bed, the silk sheets tangled around her curves. He was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an intensity that made her blush. Good morning, he said. Good morning. I have something for you. He reached over to the nightstand and picked up a small velvet box. Her heart lurched. Dante, it's not what you think, he said, a rare smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Not yet. Open it. She opened the box. Inside was a key, a simple, silver key with a tag attached that read, Vieri Enterprises, Executive Floor. I'm offering you a job, he said. A real job, head of intelligence and security analysis. You'll have an office, a staff, and a salary that would make most CEOs weep with envy. You'll be responsible for protecting the legitimate side of my business from threats both internal and external. And you'll be my partner. In every sense of the word. Elara stared at the key. I don't have a degree in business. I don't have any experience. You have something better. You have a mind that can't be fooled. You have instincts that can't be taught. And you have my complete trust. That's worth more than any degree. She looked up at him, this man who had gone from terrifying stranger to the love of her life in the span of a few months. What if I fail? You won't. How do you know? Because you've never failed at anything you set your mind to. You survived poverty. You survived cruelty. You survived a bullet. You survived me. A boardroom full of executives is nothing compared to that. She laughed. A bright, surprised sound. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also right. He took the key from the box and pressed it into her palm. Take the job, Elara. Take the life you deserve. Stop being invisible. Stop hiding. The world needs to see what I see. She closed her fingers around the key. It was cool and solid and real. Okay, she said. I'll take the job. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. Good. Now get dressed. We have a meeting at 10, and I want to introduce my new head of intelligence to the board. The board meeting was held in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of the Vieri Tower, a skyscraper that dominated the Chicago skyline. The board members were a mix of legitimate businessmen and former criminals who had gone semi-legitimate, all of them wealthy, powerful, and deeply suspicious of the curvy woman in the tailored navy suit who walked in at Dante's side. Ladies and gentlemen, Dante announced, this is Elara Vance. She's my new head of intelligence and security analysis. She reports directly to me. Her decisions are my decisions. Any questions? A man named Arthur Pennington, a silver-haired investment banker who had been on the board for 15 years, raised his hand. What exactly are her qualifications? I've never heard of her. Her qualifications are that she saved my life, exposed a traitor in our organization, and prevented a federal indictment that would have destroyed this company. Is that sufficient? Arthur's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Elara, really looked at her, and she saw the familiar flicker of disdain in his eyes. He saw her size. He saw her gender. He saw someone who didn't belong. "I'm sure she's very capable," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But perhaps she would be better suited to a support role, something less visible." Elara felt the old anger rise in her chest. The anger of being dismissed, of being underestimated, of being told she didn't belong. But this time, she didn't stay silent. "Mr. Pennington," she said, her voice calm and clear. "3 months ago, you had a meeting with a representative from the Castellano family. You discussed a merger that would have given them controlling interest in our shipping division. You didn't disclose this meeting to the board. You didn't disclose it to Mr. Vieri, and you accepted a personal payment of $200,000 for your cooperation." The room went dead silent. Arthur's face turned the color of old milk. "That's absurd. I would never." The meeting took place on March 14th at the Peninsula Hotel. You sat at table 12 in the restaurant. You ordered the sea bass. The Castellano representative ordered the ribeye, medium rare. You spoke for 47 minutes. Would you like me to repeat the conversation verbatim? Arthur stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is outrageous. I won't be accused by some what?" Elara asked, her voice still calm. "Some cleaning lady? Some fat woman who doesn't know her place? Is that what you were going to say?" Arthur's mouth snapped shut. "I was a cleaning lady," Elara said. "For 6 years, I cleaned the rooms where men like you made their deals and plotted their betrayals. And I remembered everything, every word, every name, every date. So if you think I don't belong in this room, you're welcome to leave. But if you stay, you will treat me with respect. Because I know more about what happens in this company than you ever will." She turned to the rest of the board. "That goes for all of you. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to protect this company. If you're loyal, you have nothing to fear. If you're not, I will find out. And I will make sure everyone in this room knows exactly what you've done." The silence stretched for a long, agonizing moment. Then Dante began to clap. Slowly, deliberately, his applause echoed through the conference room. One by one, the other board members joined in. Arthur Pennington sat back down, his face a mask of defeat. Elara had won. She had walked into a room full of powerful men who had dismissed her before she even opened her mouth, and she had made them see her. Not as a body, not as a joke, but as a force to be reckoned with. After the meeting, Dante pulled her aside. "You didn't need me in there," he said. "You handled that entirely on your own." "I've been handling things on my own my whole life," she said. "I just never had the power to back it up before. You have the power now, and you used it perfectly." He kissed her, right there in the hallway, in full view of the board members who were still filing out of the conference room. Let them look, let them talk. She didn't care anymore. She was done hiding. The months that followed were the happiest of Elara's life. She threw herself into her new role, building an intelligence network that rivaled anything the FBI had. She hired analysts, developed reporting systems, and created a database of every threat, every ally, and every secret the Vieri Empire possessed. She became known in the underworld as La Memoria, the memory. Criminals whispered her name with fear and respect. They knew that if Elara Vance heard you, she would never forget. And if she never forgot, Dante Vieri would never forgive. But it wasn't just work, it was love. Dante was a demanding, intense, possessive partner, but he was also tender in ways that surprised her. He remembered the anniversary of her father's death and took her to visit his grave. He learned how to make her favorite tea. He read books with her in the library, their bodies curled together on the massive leather couch. And he never, ever, made her feel like her body was something to be ashamed of. "You're beautiful," he told her one night, his hands tracing the curves of her hips. "Every part of you. I don't want you to ever hide from me. I spent so long hating my body," she admitted. "Hating the way I looked. Hating the way people looked at me. It's hard to let that go." "Then let me help you. Let me show you what I see." And he did. Night after night, he showed her. With his words, with his hands, with the way he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in his world. The final test came on a cold December night, almost a year after they had first met. A new threat had emerged, a coalition of smaller families who had banded together to challenge Vieri dominance. They called themselves the Alliance, and they were led by a man named Roberto Fiore, a ruthless upstart who had spent years building his power base in the shadows. The Alliance had managed to infiltrate one of Vieri's warehouses, stealing a shipment worth millions. They had also taken hostages, 2 security guards who had been working the night shift. Dante was furious. He wanted to respond with overwhelming force, to burn the Alliance to the ground and salt the earth behind them. But Elara counseled patience. "If you attack now, you'll start a war that will tear the city apart," she said. "Let me find another way." "There is no other way," Dante said. "They took my people. They stole from me. If I don't respond, I look weak." "You look weak if you respond without thinking," she countered. "Let me gather intelligence. Let me find their weakness. Give me 48 hours. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. 48 hours. Not a minute more. Elara went to work. She activated her network, calling in favors and leveraging contacts she had spent months cultivating. She listened to hours of surveillance audio, analyzed financial records, and cross-referenced every piece of information she could find. And then she found it. Roberto Fiore had a secret. A daughter, a 15-year-old girl named Lucia, who lived with her mother in a quiet suburb of Naperville. Roberto had kept her hidden from his criminal life, but Elara's network had uncovered the connection. She didn't want to use the girl as leverage. That was the kind of thing the old Elara would have been horrified by. But the new Elara understood that sometimes the threat of violence was more powerful than violence itself. She went to Dante with her plan. "We don't hurt the girl," she said firmly. "We don't even go near her. We just let Roberto know that we know about her. We let him know that if he doesn't release the hostages and return the shipment, his daughter's safety can't be guaranteed." "That's a bluff," Dante said. "It's a very convincing bluff. Roberto loves his daughter. He'll do anything to protect her. He'll fold." Dante considered it. Then he smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "You're terrifying. You know that? I learned from the best." The message was delivered through back channels. Within 12 hours, the hostages were released. Within 24, the stolen shipment was returned, along with a substantial payment as an apology. Roberto Fiore sent a personal note to Dante, swearing that the Alliance would never move against Vieri interests again. Elara had done it. She had stopped a war without firing a single shot. That night, Dante took her to the rooftop of the Vieri Tower. The city sprawled beneath them, a glittering carpet of lights stretching to the horizon. "I have something to ask you," he said. Her heart skipped a beat. "What?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. A diamond, large but elegant, set in a band of platinum. "Elara Vance, you walked into my life when I didn't even know I needed saving. You saw through my armor. You challenged my assumptions. You made me a better man. I don't deserve you, but I'm too selfish to let you go. Will you marry me?" She stared at the ring, her eyes filling with tears. "Dante, I know my world is dangerous. I know being with me means a lifetime of security details and constant vigilance. But I swear to you, I will protect you with everything I have. I will love you with everything I am. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again." She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him. "Yes," she said against his lips. "Yes, yes, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Dante Vieri didn't make mistakes. The wedding was small, held in the garden of the estate, with only a handful of guests. Marta was there, crying happy tears into a lace handkerchief. Pickles, the cat, was there too, wearing a tiny bow tie that he absolutely hated. And Dante was there, looking at Elara like she was the sun and the moon and all the stars in the sky. "You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever known," he said during his vows. "You were invisible to the world, but you were never invisible to me. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. I knew you were special, and I knew I would spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." Elara's vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. "You saw me when no one else did. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You gave me a life I never dared to dream of. I love you, Dante Vieri. I love you with everything I am." They kissed, and the small crowd applauded, and for one perfect moment, the world was exactly as it should be. Years later, people would still talk about the curvy cleaning lady who had become the queen of the Chicago underworld. They would tell stories about her perfect memory, her sharp mind, and the way she had exposed a traitor in front of the most powerful men in the city. They would whisper about how Dante Vieri, the most dangerous man in the Midwest, had fallen to his knees for a woman who had once been invisible. And Elara would hear these stories and smile, because she knew the truth. She had never been invisible. She had just been waiting for someone to see her. And when Dante Vieri finally did, the whole world changed. She stood on the balcony of their penthouse, looking out at the city she now helped rule. Dante came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her close. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm thinking about the night we met," she said. "The night that glass shattered. I remember. I was so scared. I thought my life was over. I thought I was going to be just another loose end. And now?" She turned in his arms and looked up at him. "Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He kissed her forehead. "You saved me, Elara. You know that, right? Not just from the traitors and the rivals. You saved me from myself. You showed me that there was more to life than power and fear. You showed me that love was possible." "We saved each other," she said. "That's what partners do." They stood there together, the king and queen of a dangerous empire, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness. And Elara Vance, the curvy cleaning lady who had once been mocked and dismissed, felt something she had never felt before. She felt seen. She felt loved. She felt invincible. The end.